Thank you, Rob. Yes.
Okay. Hey.
Oops.
Hey.
Having issues here.
Okay, Ska, are you listening?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, and then, okay, now you can.
Hi.
Okay, let's this. Okay.
Hey, Ska,
Nice
good
to see
evening.
everybody.
So,
Hello.
I think we should say, like they used to say in Eurovision, from Lisbon, Portugal, 12 points.
Thank you.
Okay, you've been great. We greatly enjoyed this debate, and we are here now discussing at our headquarters in Lisbon what's the relevance of this debate. Some of us think that we are seeing the beginning of something historical, of an embryo of European democracy. Some have said that it doesn't change that much. So we have here several opinions from. No. Ska, are you there? Ah, okay. Okay.
Yes.
So,
don't block me.
We have here several opinions from left to right, and frankly, what do you think? Are we closest to seeing something historical happening, or is it true that maybe it doesn't change that much the fact that we are debating Europe in this European crisis?
I think it actually changes really a lot. And even though member states are very reluctant to accept that they will have to present one of the lead candidates as Commission President, I think it's very clear that we have a dynamic that is basically unstoppable. All the debates, I mean, this was the major and the last one, but there were also debates early in Maastricht, in Firenze, and on radio broadcasted. And there's been a great amount of public attention also to those debates and to the fact that there are leading candidates for the first time in the European elections. So I think it's really a momentum that is unstoppable. And I also think that member states would really damage democracy if they would not follow the Lisbon Treaty and would not take the election result into account. So I really think we have a good going there.
Okay, we are happy for that, but I have also to confess that we are a bit sad because we didn't hear much about Portugal in this debate, of course. We were maybe not the first victims of bad policies in Europe, but we were among the first victims of bad policies in Europe. And I think that we will greatly benefit from better policies at the union level, particularly around youth unemployment, what we call brain flight, the fact that most of our most educated youth is leaving Portugal, and the relaunch, what we could call the rehaul of our economy. Do you, Mrs. Keller, lead candidate, have something to say on that to people in Lisbon, in video link with you?
I didn't understand. I didn't hear all of your question. You mean on youth? Was that correct?
On youth, on brain flight, what we call, the most educated youth leaving the country, and on, the relaunch of peripheral economies.
Yep. Well, I think indeed the question of youth unemployment and the forced migration that we see in the European Union is one of the biggest problems now, the big challenges that we have to tackle in the European Union. And I think we can only tackle the issue of forced migration if we create perspectives for employment and for a better life everywhere. We cannot say, okay, well, let's have an economic powerhouse somewhere and there we get all the GDP growth from and that's it. No, we have to understand that Europe has to work also in the what is always called periphery, but I mean periphery sounds like it's super far away, but all of those member states are vital parts of the European Union, and we have to create this local development. And for that, I think, especially for that, green ideas really work, because if we're talking about renewable energies, for example, and this is something that works on the local level, it's creating jobs on the local level. There's been a whole village in Greece, a small town, that has reduced youth unemployment to 0% by investing in renewables, by making themselves energy self-sufficient. So it's been creating a lot of tourism as well. It's green, clean energy for the village, but also a lot of jobs. And also when we look at innovation that is happening, that's like always something local. You don't have to go to the big cities for seeing that. And so I think really those elements work together in order to make every region in every member state like sustainable and economically well-being, and increases the well-being of these different regions. And I think this is so crucial. I mean, I'm from East Germany, where we exactly have seen this flight away from the small towns, from the faraway regions to Western Germany in that case. And people often, I mean, some of them wanted to go, but many were saying, I would rather stay at home where my friends are, my family is, but I cannot because I will not find employment. And I've seen this happening for many, many years. All my friends went away, and I think mobility is a great thing. If you want to go abroad, absolutely, but nobody should be forced to go away, and there should always be plenty of opportunities also to attract new people to come.
Okay, thanks, Ska. When I talk about these things, I get a question over and over again, which is, but will you convince the Germans? And it's very good that now we are listening a German saying the same things. Well, and you didn't need to be convinced because you already thought them before. I know that you are very tired, but maybe would you have time for 2 or 3 really quick questions?
Of course.
Okay, I don't know who wants to start. Okay.
Just make sure you talk slowly because the transmission it's not perfect.
I will translate from Portuguese into English.
Ouvi durante o debate falar sobre a preocupação com os jovens. Não têm emprego, etc. Não ouvi durante o debate a preocupação sobre os mais velhos, que constituem uma parte muito importante dos eleitores.
Okay, so we had a
não é um problema geral, é só um problema português.
Okay. We had a question about youth, and now we have a question about the elderly, because our member of the audience here rightly says that it's a bigger and increasing part of the European population.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I was talking about youth unemployment a lot because, I mean, it's a huge thing, and especially for young people starting out in a crisis is particularly harmful because that means they earn less during the rest of your life. But we also have to be very vigilant about the fact that we have also growing poverty among old people, that old people are being driven out of the workforce, and that very often they end up with a very small pension, and those pensions are also very often the first ones to be cut when austerity measures are being applied, because that's easy to do, no? It goes much quicker than closing tax loopholes, even though the latter would be much more sustainable. So we need to make sure that people who have like so often worked all their lives, be it in what is recognized as labor work, or also which is not recognized as like family labor, which is so important as well, that people have a decent living also in retirement and when they're getting older.
Okay, she seemed to have a question for you.
Yeah, it's a bit more generic question. We're an austerity-plagued country, as you know, Portugal, and we had this troika flying in and telling our government what to do. What is your opinion on this matter? What could you tell Portuguese about this? About austerity measures in general? Yeah, and yeah.
And the troika.
Well, I would tell the Portuguese government that austerity has very obviously not worked. Austerity has brought us even deeper into the crisis. And I mean, all facts and figures show that austerity does not lead to recovery. I mean, many go around now saying that, oh, we're recovery and austerity has worked, but no, it hasn't. Let's look at the millions of people unemployed, young people being unemployed, people being thrown out of their houses in Spain because they can't afford their mortgage anymore, or like people in Greece not being able to pay their medicines. And in Portugal, you know, many examples as well. So really, it has only deepened the crisis if you understand the crisis as also being a social crisis. And that, I think, is very important, because if our policies don't work for the people, then what are they good for? After all, we're making policies for the people who live in the European Union. And I mean, Troika is, of course, the driver for austerity, but I think it's important to also look at where does the Troika come from? Because, you know, it didn't come out from out of space. It's something that's been set up by the member states together with the Commission and the IMF. And there we also have to address our criticisms and be very vocal in the different member states who've been arguing for the Troika and for austerity measures that this is not acceptable. And in this, we really have to be united. And we Greens have also pushed and managed to get through in Parliament a report about human rights violations done by the Troika. And I think it's the first time a Parliament has looked into that. We will remember that from the voting session in Strasbourg. I think it's so important that we point our fingers at what has been done and what human rights violation this has brought in the area for example, in access to medicine, in childcare, in social security, because that's nothing else than human rights violations.
Okay, one last question.
As president, what can you do against austerity?
What can you do against austerity? A lot.
Yes.
You can.
Yeah. As president, if you get elected.
Yeah. Heard the question. What can I do against austerity? Well, as president. Well, we can stop it. Of course, that doesn't take the Commission alone. It also needs the member states. But we would finally need a Commission president who stands up against member states and who's not, you know, reading basically their speaking notes. And Barroso has supported the austerity measures, even those in Portugal, even though he should be able to see what they're doing in Portugal. And we absolutely need to stop that. We need to, and when I was talking earlier about investing into renewable energy and all of those like things that actually create jobs and well-being, then that's not only something that you can do at national level. For example, we have, as Greens, proposed in the multi-annual financial framework, that's the long-term budget of the European Union, to put money into research and development of renewable energy, energy efficiency, those things. And that did not go through in the European Parliament because it's been blocked by Conservatives and Social Democrats as well. And that they rather invest more money, well, investing I wouldn't call it, they want to spend more money, for example, on border controls, on satellites, on drones that like surveil the Mediterranean and make sure no refugee boat arrives here. So I think the priorities in the European budget are completely wrong. We could do so much more for investment, for really giving the right incentives for greener jobs and for a better economy. That's things I want to do as Commission President.
Okay, Ska, we are going to let you relax and have your rest. You deserve it.
Thank you.
Good rest of campaign. Good luck for you, and obrigado from Lisbon.
Thanks, and Rui, also good luck to you in your campaign. Hope to see you then soon in Brussels again.
Okay. Bye.